Thank you so much for staying tuned to this channel. Welcome to yet another edition of the program Africa Discourse. I am Wilson Marshall, where we are still in the mood of celebration, celebrating the great icon of our time, the Isam of Benin, His Excellency Sir Chief Dr. Gabriel Sari Benedict, that just turned 86. Big congratulations to you, sir. Having said that, you know, elections is like around the corner one way or the other in an African country. Could be one of the cities or the states. And sometimes, more too often, you get to hear, see, feel cases of violence. You get to see the candidate or the one in power having this beef, having this heated disagreement that spills over to the followers. And before you get to know it, the followers can just go out there in the streets causing mayhem, wanton destruction of lives and properties of which it ought not to be. If you go to Sudan or you go to Southern Sudan, you move straight to Mali, even when you get straight to Liberia, Libya, sometimes in South Africa, Central African Republic, you just name it. Tunisia is not even left out. What about Algeria? You get to see sparks of political violence before, during, and after election. You get to hear also about transmission of power. You get to hear some presidents or head of state asking for an extension of their term. You will not term them seat-tightism. I don't know. Why is it so peculiar in Africa? What are the causes and what are the possible solutions? With me here in the studio, I have a clergyman and of course a legal practitioner. Join me to welcome a reverend and of course a barrister, Rotimi Igagi.
Yeah,
welcome to Africa Discourse. Yeah, this is a debut, so to speak, on this platform. Welcome,
bless God, yeah.
Welcome, sir. All right, here we are talking about violence in Africa, on politics. Some people have been talking about that seems to be a trait in Africa. It had this peculiarity when we talk about Africa and of course their leaders in various states and of course cities in Africa. What do you feel about this trend of violence?
Well, when it comes to politics, everywhere in the world, there are always violence. Though in some areas they are minimal compared to some other countries of the world. And in Africa especially, there have been a lot of violence, especially since the 90s.
Okay, since the 90s.
Since the 90s, there have been a lot of violence. And we observe that the real cause of violence is not just because of the election, because election violence probably may be before the election, or during the election, or after the election. And the election usually come up to accelerate or spark off or as a catalyst to create a kind of atmosphere that has been tensed. When things are not right, when things are not fine the way people expect, when certain things are not put in place, when the people are happy, when people feel marginalized, they feel that during election is the only time they can be able to express themselves. And if this thing is not going to be, they will resort to violence. So usually it's not the election per se that is a result of violence. Most issues that causes violence is before election. The kind of situation that has been before the election. Take for instance when you have maybe certain group of persons feel that they have been marginalized and during election they want to forcefully express themselves. So that thing has been there where there have been civil war, for example. You know, when election come on board, that bitterness is already there. And so election just gives them the opportunity to express themselves through violence. And sometimes when they feel that the government in power or the rulership of those in government is one-sided. And the other side, they are ready on a do or die to make sure that power shifts from one side to the other. In every country in Africa, we've observed that in a lot of countries, like Togo in 2010. Yeah. We saw that of Nigeria 2007. We saw that of Liberia. We saw that of Cote d'Ivoire. And there have been a lot of electoral violence. In case of Togo and Cote d'Ivoire, it was after the election. Yeah. So sometimes what really causes electoral violence is not the election per se. It is the environment. Maybe they were already, the politics was already very hot. And so during the election, when things are not going the way they envisage, they resort to violence.
All right, now you talked about violence taking place before the election due to the heating up of the polity during that time space. But what do you think lead to the heating up of the polity that may visually spark up into violence during electioneering?
Generally speaking, in African countries, they are underdeveloped. And unemployment, the economy is, in most cases, nothing to write home about. And a lot of people are already crying and weeping, feeling that election may give them the kind of change that they desire. They see it as a solution. And when things are not going the way they expected, for example, look at the way electoral officers are appointed. Right. There is no complete separation of power. It's usually, like in the case of Nigeria, that is the government in power that appoints the electoral officers. And so if the appointment is not credible in the eyes of the common man, they are ready for violence, because they feel that at the end of the day, these same people that are appointed to mind the election, they feel they are already working for one party. So the other party is ready to do anything to disrupt the electoral process. So apart from that appointment, the unemployment which I mentioned can also result to that. And idle mind is the devil's workshop, where a lot of people are unemployed, especially the youth, that are mostly the agents that are being used for violence. When there is no job for them, and the only opportunity for them to work is to act as thugs, political thugs, and become praise singers to a particular political party who is ready to employ them and engage them for such services. No matter how brief it may be, they want to deliver. That also may lead to that. When you look at, for example, the registration and voters card, and if many people are denied of having their voters card, they cannot express their franchise, and they see that what is set in motion may not offer them good opportunity. They are ready to do it on a do or die. They wait for the time of the election to express themselves. And in most cases, when they express themselves through violence, a lot of things go wrong. A lot of people are affected. Some people are maimed, properties destroyed. And the economy they are trying to safeguard go down the drain again. Because the money used for election is one of the highest, when it comes to budgeting, it takes larger percentage of the money that will have been used to develop the economy. Because some nations, African nations, even borrow
for elections.
For elections. They borrow for elections in order to be able to run it. And we have also seen some countries that we are doing fairly well, and after the election, the economy goes down. and because of what is spent. And money spent on election are not something you can physically be able to attest to, or maybe you can't get any concrete thing to show for it. It just goes down the drain. So all these are the result of violence that leads to violence during the election.
All right, now you mentioned one aspect of it, talking about the electoral umpire, when there is this affiliation to the ruling party or the administration that can breed distrust. Can that really lead to electoral violence from what you just said?
It can lead to violence very well. When people are contesting for any position, first, they want to be sure that one, that the election will be free and fair. Two, that in peradventure, after putting all their resources, that the electoral body saddled with the responsibility of looking into electoral issues, they are fair in their judgment, that they are carrying out their duty. But if there is a reasonable suspicion of bias, if there is reasonable suspicion of bias, they are ready to create violence. The other party, especially the opposition party, sometimes they feel that those in government are using government tools either to oppress them or to prevent them from getting a fair, free and fair elections. So the only way, hence they don't have a legal right to be able to approach the issue, they resort to violence.
Now, can you deduce that if there's electoral violence, it can be linked to a failed system in governance?
Of course, you cannot divorce failed system from electoral violence. Because if things are working fine and well, like I said earlier, if the people are employed, if the economy is good, and if everyone is, they have the social amenities are available, the tension of the people will drastically reduce. If some people feel that they are marginalized, no light, no water, no road, and election is coming again, and all these things have not been provided by the government that was in power, they feel that is the only way they can express themselves to say no to maybe the government in power. And so when this is not done, there will be violence. But where the governance has been, free and fair, and it's a government that respects the rules of law, and things have been going the way they expected, I'm sure that a lot of people will have no need to resort to violence.
All right. Now, if you take a look at Africa, some of the opinion that is because of leadership. Some leaders want to stay in power as long as possible. For example, Nkurunziza, well, if you take a look at also Alassane Ouattara, what about what happened recently in Mali? Boubacar Keïta, these are examples in current times that tend to heat up the polity in their own country because of the crave to stay longer in power. What do you feel about all this?
Well, to African man, they sometimes find it difficult to play according to the rule. You see, when there is a game, there are rules for the game. If at the middle of the game you want to change the rules, then the people become hostile because you have from the beginning told them that this is how it's going to be. But only at the middle of the game you are changing the rules. Sometimes the people who are gaining from government or from those in power, they are the ones who are actually responsible for the electoral violence. Sometimes it's not the candidates themselves. Take, for example, far back to the 60s, where Nkrumah of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana was the president. At a point in time, they came out with a legislation and shouted, Osejafo, Osejafo, you are the president of life. They told Nkrumah to make himself life president.
Life president.
They asked him to become life president. That was they feel that he's good and he's doing what is good for them. So certain people were benefiting Seriously. So they were asking for, they were asking that the rule of the game should be changed and should be made like president. And we saw, you know, during the time of Obasanjo, certain set of people came together seeking for third term. Despite the clarity in the Constitution about the terms and you know, all the available legislations and statutes, you know, provided for only 2 tenure. But certain people in the society, in certain aspects, who were gaining so much from that administration, they wanted it to come for 3rd tenure, which is against the rule. And at that point, thank God he was wise enough to come down. If he was a man who wants power at all costs and want to remain in power, he will allow them to continue. And because he have all the tools to make himself like president, he will do so and silence everybody. So when they are bound to be violent, such a thing, you see, what is really resulting in it is that some of those in power, some, when they get to power, they don't want to relinquish the power, because either because of what they have done and they don't want it to be uncovered by another, or because they just see it as their birthright. And so they want to continue. But the average man want to resist against it.
Okay. Now, you from what you said at the beginning, you're like saying that election violence most time comes before election due to the heating up of the polity.
Yeah.
But sometimes in Africa, I would call it post-election violence. And all these are related also to election.
Yeah.
What do you think leads to that?
Well, firstly, when you discover that after the election and the result does not express the will of the people, usually the
people or certain amount of the people.
No.
Because some will still be in tune with the results.
In most cases, we are seeing situations where Party A wins the election and Party B is declared the winner. And after court process, sometimes it's reversed back to Party B, which means, as it were, originally, it was not Party A. So, and even the people themselves are aware that it is not so. So, the only way, instead of them to be patient to allow court process, they want to take the law into their hands. Sometimes they don't even have confidence in the court. They think that even if you go to court, are we sure that the court will be able to remedy such situation? We have seen many cases in Nigeria where the court have to reverse, which means the person that was presented as the winner was never the winner. And such a thing can lead to post-election violence. So this is one of the reasons why people express themselves that way, because they feel that they all came out en masse to vote, and they could sample opinions and be able to know, even from those who are asked to monitor the elections, they already know where it's going to. In every election, you must know probably who is taking the day from the results. Sometimes, like what we have in Nigeria, you hear now inconclusive elections. Yes, inconclusive. And sometimes they tell you that a certain area or certain section, there were no ballot boxes or electoral materials were not provided to a certain section. So what did you expect them to do? After the election is when they were able to express themselves. That where do you get the result? That we did not vote. Where do you get the result? You are reading from our polling center, when we were not provided with the necessary materials for voting. That is what some of the things that make some people who feel they cannot take this nonsense upon sticks, and they organize themselves and resort to violence.
All right, we're talking about some causes of political violence, both pre and, of course, election and post-election violence. What about the solution? What do you think can really nip this in the bud or reduce the rate of electoral or political violence in Africa? Because it's like from the north, south, east, and west in African countries get to hear or see reports of electoral political violence one way or the other. Either is for by the incumbent say that he wants to extend his stay in office, or you get to hear protesters say we don't agree to this result, or you get to hear that trying to disenfranchise us, they destroyed the electoral umpire office, fire gutted one or just so many, too many complaints by these countries, and it's not so cool for Africa as a continent. What do you think should be the solution?
Firstly, Africa should learn to obey the rule of law. Because most African countries and leaders, most of them, not all of them, they don't obey the rule of law. No matter which law or legislation is put in place to control elections, if there is no rule of law, of course, the people will not have confidence in the leadership or in that nation. First, in most African countries, you discover that those in power usually do not obey laws that seem to restrict them or go against them, and some don't even honor court judgments. Where there is no separation of power. There is no separation of power. Maybe the same person you appoint, you ratify, you hire and fire, especially officers in a sensitive position like this. If, for example, if we are going to have ANEC officers, especially the one who will be overall chairman or zonal representative, it should be by election.
By election?
By election. It should not be appointment of one man. Appointing you, I'm in power. I'm appointing you, become the chairman of INEC. How independent can you be when my salary comes from you? When I determine your pay, when I determine what you take home.
But the name raised Independent National Electoral Commission for Nigeria.
Independent
and of course, in some African countries also, they attempt to be independent.
Yeah.
Go to Ghana, the same thing. Go to Ivory Coast, the same thing. Zimbabwe, Cameroon, Egypt, Tunisia, they're all independent.
It can only be independent if it is through election that the person is voted into power. He will not be responsible to any government in power because he was elected. So where a man has to appoint you, and before you appointment, a lot of people lobby to gain that appointment, and they were not given. And I call you, I say, come, please, I want you to be the chairman. You know why I'm appointing you? Because I want to come back. If you are not ready to deliver, I will not appoint you. And of course, before you are appointed, you must prove yourself to be a loyalist. You have to submit to me. And I determine your pay. And who is to approve what will be given to you to organize the election is me.
All right.
So when they are not voted for, they are not independent in any way. Okay. Because whatsoever thing you have to do, you have to write through me, and I have to be the one to determine.
All right,
how independent can that be?
All right, now, if you really want to determine the response of African Union and, of course, each bloc to electoral violence in Africa, what will be your rating? You know, you get to hear there's violence in this country. You get to hear AU coming together, ECOWAS coming together, the Eastern Bloc trying to come together to quell this crisis. Their response so far in Africa as a continent, how would you rate it?
Well, I want to say that those who are in power are not fair to the people they are leading. The same people who are the one masterminding the people in charge, the people instigating, they are the same people you are calling together to come and look into the issue of electoral violence in Africa. Everyone, if you are a president, I know what you know. I'm probably doing what you are doing. And probably if you succeed, you show me your way, the way. And I'm going to also by that. If it works for you, I believe it will work for me. So you see, until the African leaders realize that they are responsible to the people and not to themselves and their families and friends and well-wishers. No. Until we learn that, until we are ready to play according to the rule of the game, which in most cases we don't. So, in fact, I want to say that it has been poorly managed. Hence, despite several meetings that have been held to make sure that these things are averted, but it's the same. It's the same ball game.
So you're saying you just can't rate them high, curbing this electoral violence, political violence in Africa?
No. Africa, they don't even have the integrity.
But take a look at the response of ECOWAS to the Malian situation. They are doing well. Don't you think so?
These are political talks. Go there and see for yourselves. If those things you are hearing on papers, you are hearing people are saying it's the same thing that is going on within. So these are political talk. If you are sent now to represent us and go there and talk about this, you are going to say how much you have done. We have had some people before who was sent to go and represent us, like the man who is our chief of staff now. One time was sent. Is on such mission. And all the report we got was fine, but at the end of the day, the people were crying.
Wow.
So,
all right. Well, we want to start, calling it a wrap right now on this show because our time is up. It's all about political violence in Africa, causes and solutions. Here in the studio is a legal practitioner and, of course, a clergyman, Rotimi Egage. He's been giving so much view on this particular topic. But one thing he said that is sacrosanct that you can take home is simple obedience to the rule of law. That can really curb all this political violence we are seeing in Africa. Thank you so much for coming on today's show. I appreciate your coming. You know, it's an abbreviation. Our time is up.
Yeah.
We have some other time to expatiate on this particular topic. I appreciate your coming.
Thank you.
All right,
God bless.
And that's it for today's edition of Africa Discourse. Viewers, see you tomorrow, God willing, on International Forum. Bye for now.